Very good. Well, I'll flip back there later. Let me pray to kick off. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord. Constant, foundational, preemptive, persistent. Father, may we walk in faith. Guide us as we share together. May we share in the joy of seeing your word come to life and connect with our hearts. May your Spirit be speaking to us, each and every one of us. May it pierce through any masks or distractions. May you achieve your end of glorifying your own name through building us up, through meeting us where we are, according to our needs. I thank you for the way you've laid things out already. And we are blessed to join you. We thank you for these in Jesus' name. Amen. Now, we chatted last week when we talked about the fact that we'd had this, we'd got this preliminary report back when we'd done our church review together, and we worked through these different things, and there were a couple of different values that had come out of that were key and important, that emerged as consistently something that as a church we value highly. And last week we talked about authenticity. Authenticity as a value that we see as core to what it means for us to be our church. Authenticity being somewhat of a complicated term, depending on what you understand it to be. Authenticity as being a practice of continually peeling back the layers of being fake, putting on masks around other people, relying on things that aren't God, and not being true to the original calling. It is a practice that we do. It is a posture that we have. A posture of authenticity is a posture of repeated and continual openness to God and willingness and humility to submit before Him. Now, there were a couple of other values to kind of work through that I was initially given actually by Naomi and Bruce when they said, look, here's a couple of things that I think would be really helpful to look at. And I've been working on a few of them as I've kind of been reflecting and kind of meditating on a couple of these different values. And I really wasn't sure this week. I was really kind of wrestling with God about which of these particular ones I was going to bring today. And I really only settled on which message I was going to present probably yesterday as I was kind of reflecting on these two. And I think I'm quite moved by the fact that ultimately I felt like what I was called to talk on was faithfulness. And when you pick something and you kind of think, is it the right thing or not? And then when you have a song like that on the centenary right before you get up, it just points to God's faithfulness. So I probably don't need to say anything else. But I mean, if you paid me, I may as well go through the motions. Hey, no, that's not quite it, is it? What is faithfulness? If we value faithfulness, if we are faithful, if we have faith, what does that mean? I think we know it as a word. It's used in lots of different contexts, inside and outside of the church. What is it to have faith? So you can kind of go flat. To have faith in something is to have confidence, to kind of trust in something. Sometimes it's specifically the trust that you have on something when you don't really have evidence. Sometimes it's, you're working on a car and you begin to kind of look at what's going on inside the car and someone says, I don't think this one's coming back. And the response would be, I have faith. And you say that referencing the fact that there's nothing visible in evidence to the fact that you're going to do it. This is hope beyond belief. This is a Hail Mary. This is a shot in the dark. To break faith is to break loyalty. It's to lose your loyalty for something or lose someone else's loyalty to you. And to cut off your nose to spite your faith You've misheard because someone has a lisp and it's not really relevant. In Hebrews, we see that we get a nice flat-out definition. In Hebrews 11, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. We talked, I don't know if it was last week or week before, this fantastic chapter in Hebrews where he's talking about having faith. And he goes through the stories, he's kind of does this skimming along the top of all these stories through the Bible about people or people of faith and what they were what did they do right? Because we know that all of them did stuff wrong. But we see that in each of these stories, they had faith. They trusted God and they put their money where their mouth is and they committed to stuff, even though they didn't know how it would end up. And it says some of them, they never even saw the full fruits of what they had faith in. A lot of the prophets and things like that, their hope was in the future. Faith is more than vague hope. It's more than a shot in the dark. When we look at what faith looks like and how it's talked about in the Bible, we see that there's a confidence and there's a sureness to it that goes beyond just, it's a good guess, it's a solid guess. It's often connected to the character of God and often connected to hope about the future. If you had a magic window, first of all, let me know. I think we need to deal with that. But if you've had a magic window and you could see into the future, and you started off your day, and you roll out of bed, and you can look through the little window, and you can see yourself at the end of the day sitting at the dining table with a nice meal. Your family's there, happy and healthy. You've got a big grin on your face. You can just tell that they are unstressed, things have gone well, that you're not running out of money or food, that things are really good. And you could see that. Every morning you could go and you could check and see. And, maybe one week you think, oh, no, the food is a little sparse, or, someone's got a bruised eye or something. But if you sat there and you looked through and you could see that all would be well, that would change the way you lived your day, right? Assuming you knew that it was right, you'd go out and you wouldn't really worry. You see someone in trouble, jump in, help them. You can risk it. Why? Because you know that in the end, it will all be well, If someone needs support in something, well, you can invest in that because you know that in the end it's going to be okay, Oh, the kids are going off on this excursion to Niagara Falls. They're going to walk across the top on the top. That's all right. I know that in the end, they're going to come home okay. It's okay. It's set. I can have confidence because I know what the end is, the end of the chapter of the book. None of those are endorsed ideas, by the way. There's an implication that comes. Whenever it talks about faith, there's an implication that it's tied not just to the belief, but to the action that comes with it. You might have heard that the famous phrase, the famous verse in James where he says, faith without deeds is dead. If you had an alligator, so say I had an alligator in the back room, go with me on this, and I promise I don't. If you had an alligator in the back room and he said, prove that you've got an alligator, and I pulled it out here, what would you want to see that would prove that it's an alligator? Teeth, great, good one. Moving. yeah, if my arm's stuck up it, maybe that's not there. If it was a handbag, if it was made of plastic, if it was taxidermized even, there's a sense in which, is the full alligator there? No. If I said that I wrestled with an alligator and you found it was stuffed, it would be a very different experience. If you had the weatherman, right, and the weatherman came up, and I talked about this morning, it's disconnected. Let's say you went out and you talked to the weatherman, and he's like, you know what, I've checked it, I've done all the studies and stuff. Today will be beautiful, sunny and warm. And then he's, all right, excellent, fantastic, thanks so much, you can go now, thanks for stopping past my house, tell me the weather, I don't know. And as he heads off, he puts on his rain jacket and he grabs his umbrella and he goes out the door. You'd think, I don't know if I've got faith in what he said, and I don't know that he's got faith in what he said, because he's walked out the door with an umbrella when he said it was going to be sunny. One of my parents, that way it's still anonymous, when they were teaching me to drive, would be extremely encouraging. You are a really good driver. We had lots of lessons. You know the stuff. You're good. We're good. We're just getting up the hours. But when we left the driveway, and their hand was on the handbrake, and the other hand was on the door handle, so they, I don't know, pull it out and dive out the door or something. It spoke to me maybe more clearly of their faith, even than their words had. Faith is always connected to our actions, and if our actions are not connected, then faith is not substantiated. Is it? You know what I mean? It's not real. It's not full, and it's not alive. It's not a crocodile you can wrestle with any sense of adrenaline. Faith is about an investment into a future that's connected with this thing. When you go out without an umbrella, you've invested in the fact that it's not going to rain. And we also, another place we can see that faith isn't just about really good guesses, is the fact that the Bible talks so often about God's faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. And we know that that's not saying, well, God, you're really good at guessing that things are going to turn out all right. We're not saying that God doesn't know what's coming up, but he's just kind of got a really good guess that things are going to be okay. We know God better than that. His compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness, O God. We can see that if God is faithful, then it's more than just about that. We talk about the idea of breaking, of being unfaithful. If you're in a relationship with someone, there is a vow that you might make. Say you got married to a particular person. Certainly we did. Is she not there? Okay, all right, speak freely. We made a vow together that was a vow of faith. It was a commitment to a future. It wasn't a guess. When we made our vows, we didn't say, I really hope this works well. I'll give it my best shot, but, we'll see what happens. And of course, we know that life has ups and downs, and ultimately, it relies on two people, doesn't it? And when you hear about unfaithfulness in a marriage relationship, what you hear about is somebody who has made this investment, this deep investment in a relationship, this committed investment in a relationship that has now come to a point where they are investing their faith outside the relationship. They have another place that they think they're hedging their bets, or they're moving their faithfulness outside of that relationship. And one of the profound aspects of love that is painful is that faith needs to be mutual. When it's in a relationship, you need two people. Two people are required to have faith in each other, to have this kind of fruitful relationship. To break faith, to be unfaithful, is about where is the investment that you are putting in this relationship. So when we talk about God being faithful, we talk about God's investment in us, in the love that he has for us. God's investment in the relationship that he has with us. And what do we see about God's faithfulness? What do we see about God's love for us? What was the ultimate expression of that love? You've got these Psalms talking about the faithfulness of God, his perseverance, his love even through faithlessness. In 2 Timothy, if we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself. His very character is of investment in love in us. The word that he gave, the word that God used, what is a word? If a word is something, it's a magical kind of set of vibrations you can make with your larynx in your tongue or whatever, that kind of travel through the air. And I say yellow chair, and it kind of wobbles out through the air, and the atoms kind of collide. And then magically, in Peter's head, they come in through the air, and they wobble in, and then suddenly, he's got a picture of a yellow chair. And somehow my brain and my heart have kind of, through a word, have transitioned over, and we have shared in a word and a heart a concept and an understanding about what something is. So if that's what a word is, in very simple expressions, what is the word that God has used to express, this is who I am? And we see who was the word. Jesus himself was God's ultimate expression of who he was to us. And when we look at who Jesus was, and we can see the extent of God's faithfulness. And what is God's faithfulness to us? Kevin laid it out magnificently earlier in the service when we shared together the basis of what we do. God's faithfulness to us is that. A good person, cares about his friend. A really good person may lay down his life for his friend. But we know God's love for us in that while we were still sinners, faithless, stuffing stuff up, he died for us. That is faithfulness. Faithfulness that perseveres, that goes above and beyond. So what about for us? What can faithfulness look like in church? Can we stuff it up, or is it kind of like a bit of a shoe-in? I think it somewhat depends on where we anchor our faithfulness. And I think you can stuff up on this, so to speak. If someone comes up to you and they say, have you heard about that church down in that town? I've got a friend who's going there, what's it like? And someone says, oh yeah, they're a faithful church. What jumps to mind? And I think over time I've learned that different people mean different things by that. Sometimes what they mean, if they say they're a faithful church, what it means is that they are faithful to the correct doctrines of faith that I think are the right ones. They believe the right things. They've got the right set of things that they believe compared to the other churches around them. They are faithful to the right doctrines. Sometimes they mean that they maybe are affiliated with the right denomination. They are faithful because they're Catholic. They're connected with the right people, or they are Zimbabwean Orthodox, or they are, Churches of Christ, or, New Covenant, Evangelical, Reformed, whatever. Like they're the right affiliation. They're faithful to the correct people and governance structure. They're a faithful church. Or maybe it's the way that they meet. A faithful church has at least 4 songs. And they're not like they're not Planet Shaker songs or anything like that, or they use the right terminology. Or a faithful church is a church where they rock up and they're not, in thongs, and but they actually, you can tell that they care because of the dress standard that they've got. Or, when they pray at the end, they always say in Jesus' name. A faithful church, they say the right thing at the end so that God hears them. Or, there's all sorts of different things that we can use our metrics for. Is this church a faithful church? Sometimes it's determined by the leader or the leadership team. And I think this one, maybe I'm oversensitive to it, but I think that faith in people can be a real trap. It's certainly one that I've fallen into. How devastating is it when someone that you really respect, whether it's a minister or a preacher on YouTube, or whether it's just your football coach or something like that, someone that you look up to, someone that you have great, profound faith in, stuffs up or loses faith or, falls into sin. It's a devastating thing. It's a real tragedy. I've certainly experienced that with people that I have looked up to. All of these different things that we've looked at are really important. To have the correct doctrines. The wrong doctrines or not having the right understanding, a true picture of who God is, can be devastating, can lead people astray, and can become an obstacle between God and people. To show flippancy towards God in the way that we speak, or the way that we dress, or the way that we consider the consequences of sin, can also be devastating, can leave people in the dark, and can mean that we are not seeing God clearly. The way that service is run can fail to feed God's people, can leave people disconnected. All of these things are really important. And submission to and the honoring of leaders is critically important. I think we are all called to be in support of the leaders that God gives us in the church. But none of these things none of these things should or can be the anchor for our faith. The unity that we can share in faithfulness can only come through faith in God himself and what he has done for us. I believe that is part of the reason why we've got this reminder, communion we share every week, the juice and the cracker, the snack stop on our way through to the message. This is our reminder about who God is and what he does. This is our basis upon which all the rest of the stuff works, because it reminds us that our faith is in God. It's not in ourselves. We stuff up. We muck up. It's not in the leaders. They're going to stuff up. I promise you, you anchor your faith in me, you will be disappointed. Don't do it, in the church and the way that it runs, in the doctrines that we've got, that set us because we're really sure they're configured correctly. None of that. All of that is sand to build your house on. There is only one rock, stable place that we can build our church, our personal faiths, our relationships, and that is on Jesus. That is on him and what he has done for us. Another thing that I did last week that I think I find really helpful is, as I'm considering these attributes like authenticity, faithfulness, I sometimes like to think about the people in my life who I think exhibit these characteristics. Faithful people. I would say faithfulness is probably one of the first things that I really admired about Liz. Is a deep, humble integrity and a faithfulness. There's a lot of mentors and people that I've known who have been faithful people. What are the things in that I think represent to my heart faithfulness? When I think about faithful people, I think about wrestlers. Have you ever watched wrestling? That's not the wrestling I'm talking about, so you can put that from your mind. Wrestling, people who wrestle with God, people who, in their faith, they don't let maybe some of the set things become obstacles. When they meet a circumstance and God is moving in their heart and they think, I feel like God is calling me to do this or say this or be around this person, but I feel like maybe my Christian friends would frown on me for this, or maybe that would be a danger for me. Maybe I'd fall into this is scary territory. They don't just rely on that, but they wrestle with God. They bring it back to God. Faithful people, they know that the book isn't a set of laws. It is a place that we meet God, that we chew. The Bible is good for chewing on. Not just for babies, but for us. Going back to a verse, wrestling with it, bringing it before God, praying about it, opening it up, thinking it and rethinking it, bringing it into conversation with other passages and listening to what God brings to light, new things. The Bible is alive, we are told. Faithful people are humble. I think faithful people can only be humble because where does pride come from? Pride comes from confidence in the stuff that we've got, whether it's confidence in yourself. I know the right thing to do. I know how it's going to work. I've got my anchor placed in something that I've got control of, that I know thoroughly, that is tame to my knowledge. Faithfulness in God is never that simple because it is essentially always a relationship. You can know God, but you can't know him so well that you can kind of sketch out exactly what he thinks or how he does stuff, even as we like to. Faithfulness requires humility, and it breeds humility as we are challenged again and brought into new things and new knowledge. Faithful people grow in peace. You see, the people that I know who have walked a journey with God and walked a journey of faithfulness are people, typically, I think, that seem to be able to be peaceful in difficult situations. Now, let me say clearly on this, what I'm not saying is if you are not feeling peaceful in a difficult situation, you do not have faith. I think like we talked about before, if authenticity is about working in the soil of the garden of your heart and God growing the fruits, we are not sinful because we do not have the fruits. It is simply that we attend to the garden and the fruits will grow. And what I'm saying is for those who have had faithfulness and authenticity in growing the garden, some of the fruits that seem to grow out of that are peace. And I think that comes through the experience of having been through difficult situations and having had the experience of walking through the valleys and the difficult and the dark times and being led through and seeing, okay, God did not abandon me in this. I followed him and he brought me through again and again. And over time, you begin to develop a sense of, well, he got me through the last thing. This is new and bigger and scarier, but I can be faithful because of who God is. Faithful people are patient. I think that's connected with that. There's a sense of perseverance. When the winds kick up, when there's stormy and tumultuous times, faithful people are not quick to be anxious, to panic, to pull on the brake or the handbrake and the car door, but they can wait on what God is calling them to do. They know that maybe they've had experience that. Sometimes when you jump in with what I think is the right thing to do, we put our foot in the cake, which is an expression I'm coining right here and now. We can jump in with the wrong thing. We can do what feels right in the moment. It talks about there is a path before men that appears right but leads on to destruction. Do not rely on your own understanding, but lean on God. They are patient, waiting on God, persevering, knowing that the path will lead through the valley, not into the valley of the shadow of death. As we look to next year, one thing that we are all confident of, we don't need faith to have a guess about this. We know that as we head into next year, there will be new challenges. There are already certain rocks and shadows where we do not know how the path looks. I loved Ross's picture. When he had our picture of the way ahead, he had a winding path that goes over hills and comes up again. We know we don't know what's coming up, and we're aware of that. And that should and does cause anxiety in us. Not should cause anxiety, because anxiety is, but you would expect that as you look at that, you're not going to say, I know exactly what's going to happen. If you do, please meet with me after the service. that would be nice. But we don't know. We know that it's going to take faith. We know it's going to take faith, little f, in our leaders, support for our leaders and the decisions that we make, which will never completely align with what we would do in their circumstance and what we think is, completely the right way forward. But that's not what following and leadership is about. We can be supportive and show support even when we don't think it's what we would do. That takes faith too. That takes more faith, you would argue. We can persevere when the shape of a service might shift, or different emphasis is placed in different parts of the Bible, or the way that worship happens and things like that. We know there will be change and there will be steps forward. Like when Naomi preached about the chap with the wheelbarrow going across the skyscrapers, that it takes courage, it takes faith in God. But in all these things, when we consider ourselves a faithful church, I do think we will come unstuck if we anchor ourselves personally or as a group or as a leadership team, if we anchor our faith in anything other than the rock of God and his word and the way that he speaks to us and leads us. I'd like to pray for us.